We have a big guest alert because on today's show, we're bringing on ESPN draft analyst Jordan Reid to break down the 2022 Chargers draft class.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers together for over 6 seasons. We're headed into our 5th season as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys so much for making us your first listen, and to make sure you never miss a show like today with Jordan Reid, subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and also follow the show for free on all platforms wherever you get your podcast from. But on today's show, we do have that big guest, ESPN's Jordan Reid. I remember when we had him the first time, he was still with the Draft Network, and he's one of my favorite draft analysts, so I'm stoked to have him on today's show. And we're going to talk about what he thinks about the Chargers taking Zion Johnson over Trevor Penning, why he thinks that Isaiah Spiller lasted way too long, which we also agree with, and the great value that they got with Jamaree Salyer at guard, getting him in the 6th round. We'll also talk about a guy he wishes the Chargers would have gotten. Spoiler, us too. And then at the end of the show, we'll talk about Keenan Allen getting into the press conference at OTAs, talking about how he thinks the culture has changed. And one of the reasons he thinks that is how many veterans showed up to the Chargers OTAs. You just don't see that very often. But time to get into this 2022 draft class with Jordan Reid. All right, guys, very, very excited to have a special guest, and actually a recurring guest. We have today ESPN NFL draft expert Jordan Reid on the show with us. I mean, last time he was on with us was a couple of years ago now. He's doing big things with ESPN next to Mel Kiper Jr. and Todd McShay, and happy to have you on the show today to talk about some Chargers draft picks with us, Jordan. Thanks for coming on, man.
It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, of course. We very much appreciate it. And I guess first, the thing I would want to ask you is just when you're looking at the Chargers draft class, obviously there's a lot of mocks and things that you do leading up to the draft. Not everyone's going to get the players that you think they are. But when you look at who the Chargers got, taking Zion Johnson, Isaiah Spiller, getting the guys Jamaree Salyer, and the guys they got later on, who was your favorite of the Chargers draft picks in this year's class based on just either how they fit, or maybe it's a player that you were super high on, maybe higher than most other draft experts?
You know, they want interior offensive line, but I thought Scott did was that he made a statement about wanting to protect Justin Herbert, and he did it last year. They had a home run getting Rashawn Slater, but now you bring in Zion Johnson, who I had rated as the highest interior offensive lineman in this draft class as a whole. So I really like adding him to the forefront, pairing him with the already impressive interior that they already had. So a lot of people thought they possibly could go right tackle as well. They elected to go tackle a little bit later with Jamaree Salyer. I'm not really sure their plans as far as they're going to play him inside or outside. I think he has some positional flexibility. He played it all when he was at Georgia. So what I really took away from the draft is that the positions everybody thought they were going to pick early on, they ended up going later. And then some positions that a lot of people didn't see coming, like interior offensive line, I thought they did that very early on, like with Zion Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, Zion Johnson was definitely a pick we were very, very excited about. We were very high on him and thought that he was one of the more complete players in this draft. But obviously, one of the biggest needs that the Chargers had going into this was right tackle. But at pick 17, they decided to go with Zion Johnson over a tackle like Trevor Penning. We were big fans of the pick. What did you think of that? Do you think they made the right call?
Yeah, I mean, I love Zion Johnson. He was my number 14th ranked player overall in his draft class. And I really fell in love with him at the Senior Bowl. I loved his tape throughout the season. He played every single position outside of center during his time at Boston College, but during the pre-draft process, that's all he played. At the Senior Bowl, he played a little bit of center and also some guard too. But I think with him, it's just a love for the game. And I love telling this story about Zion from the Senior Bowl because it's something I'll never forget. And it's funny how you get a different experience when you see these guys in person as opposed to just watching them on tape. So I think he was on the national team, if I'm not mistaken, at the Senior Bowl. So the American team, the national team actually practices first. And if you remember, Zion has never played center during his career. He played left tackle during his sophomore season, and then he went back to guard after that. And after that experiment didn't really work out. So with Zion, what he did was after everybody was done with their interviews with the media after practice, he actually stayed until the next practice to get some extra snaps at center. So little stuff like that is what really makes me fall in love with the player, just because it kind of pulls back the curtain a little bit about his love for the game and just his determination to get it right. And even though he never played center, he had never snapped before during his career at Boston College, he said after that practice, I'm determined to get this right just because not only is it going to help improve my draft stock, but also it's going to be able to show my love for the game too. So I always love telling that little story from the Senior Bowl about Zion Johnson.
Yeah, and it's not like he was a dude just like scraping by to try to, get on a team. He was a dude who was going to be a borderline first-round pick no matter what, pretty much. It's not like he had to do it, but he still stayed there and did it anyways. And we know how much the Chargers value those off-season parts of the pre-draft process, especially the Senior Bowl. Tom Telesco loves it. But yeah, I mean, I think with that, it's always, do you take the fourth best tackle or do you take, the number one interior offensive lineman in Jordan Reid's mind? He had him as a better overall prospect. So, of course, he likes the pick. But one of the surprise picks for the Chargers was taking JT Woods in the third round. You had him as around a fourth round pick. And I think that was one where you look at it and be like, okay, maybe they reached a little bit there. What traits do you think they kind of saw in him to make that leap? Because it did seem like, at least from what was out there, he was a guy that was rising up draft boards quickly.
Well, I think it's just his flexibility. And the great thing about JT is that he's going to really unleash Derwin James a little bit more to allow him to play all over the field. Because JT primarily played the high free safety. And if you remember, all the love went to Jalen Petrie from Baylor.
Yeah.
And the thing about Petrie is that he roamed around the line of scrimmage, and his versatility is something that everybody really likes about him. But the player that allowed him was JT Woods, just because he was one that was roaming the middle of the field. JT Woods' body's a little bit underdeveloped. Right. I want to gain a little bit more weight. I would like to see him gain about 5 to 10 more pounds. I think it's going to help him become a little bit more reliable as a tackler. But the ball skills he has, the fluidity he has, the speed he has, but it's just a matter of him becoming a little bit more consistent as a tackler. But I can see why Brandon Staley really liked him, just because it's just his ability. Whenever you can get a center fielder free safety and somebody that you can really rely on at that spot, it allows those versatile chess pieces like a Derwin James to really wear more hats as opposed to just being fixated on one certain position. And that's not to say Derwin has only been fixated on one position, but we know he's one of those players that you want to use all over the place. And he's 100%. One of those players that I like. He's one of those players that I like to call that's an all of the above player. You can't get so fixated on him being a free safety or a strong safety. You want to unleash him in so many different spots, but you have to have that guy in the middle of the field in order to unleash him. And I think JT Woods can kind of be that guy to where Brandon Staley can use him all over the place.
Yeah, that's super, super exciting, too, because Derwin James is just one of those guys that's really good at everything. Anything you ask him to do, he can go out there and do it at a high level. That's why you want to just put him everywhere. But the Chargers needed a reliable backup running back to Austin Ekeler, and they were able to get Isaiah Spiller in the fourth round. He was your fourth ranked running back, but ended up being the 9th running back selected. What can the Chargers fans expect from their potential new RB2?
Yeah, don't be surprised if he's the guy that has the biggest impact of any in this draft class or in this draft class for the Chargers. And I say that just because Austin Ekeler, I think he's at his best when you can use him all over the place, whether it's slot in the backfield or all these other pieces. But they just didn't have that complementary 1A or 1B piece to him last year. And I think Isaiah Spiller, who was very underrated throughout the pre-draft process, I didn't think he had a good pre-draft process at all.
No.
But as far as his film, I mean, his film is really, really good. And it was a deep running back class, honestly. I think that's why some of these guys slipped and they fell to the third or the fourth round. And there wasn't that high-end running back like we saw in previous years, like a Travis Etienne or a Najee Harris. But this class was really deep. And I was surprised that Spiller fell as far as he did. But as far as all the running backs, I think he landed in a great spot just because I think he's that guy that can be that 1A rusher in this offense with Justin Herbert, once again, bringing in these complementary pieces. So don't be surprised if he has one of the bigger impacts of any in this draft class.
Yeah, and I think the other thing with him, too, is he has a clear path to playing time, right? Because there was no one able to take over that 1B role to Austin Ekeler. And for Austin Ekeler's long-term future and health and being able to stay out there 17 games, it's going to be a huge help to him. But we still have more draft picks we want to talk about with Jordan Reid from ESPN coming on the show with us today. And we're going to get into that coming up right after this. Well, I'm loving what Jordan Reid has to say about this 2022 Chargers draft class, but I also need to tell you guys about BlueNile.com. At BlueNile.com, you can celebrate all of life's special moments, from creating custom engagement rings of your dreams to gifting a classic and timeless piece of jewelry, all at prices you won't find at the traditional jeweler. Whether you're ready to pop the question or you're celebrating a milestone moment, find jewelry as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com, the original online jeweler since 1999, and they've helped millions of couples create the perfect engagement ring. So BlueNile.com is the place to go for any of your moments that you have to have with your significant other, with your mother even. They have the best jewelry that you're looking for, and if you want to make it special, you go to BlueNile.com. Whether you're customizing an engagement ring or designing diamond stud earrings, this is the place to go, because Blue Nile will allow you to create a bigger, more brilliant piece than you can imagine at a price that you won't find at the traditional jeweler. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And right now, you guys can even have a special code since you listen to this show. If you use the promo code LOCKEDON, you can get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. That's promo code LOCKEDON. And every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in a discreet packaging, so you don't have to worry about someone finding it. You'll get it in that discreet package, so just go to BlueNile.com today. All right, guys, we are back here with NFL draft analyst for ESPN, Jordan Reid, coming on the show again with us, even though he's hit the big time now at ESPN. So happy that he took the time to come on with us today. And we have more Chargers draft picks we want to talk about with him. And one of the things that the Chargers, just going into the offseason in general, really had to fix, because it was one of the worst things about their team in the league in 2022 or 2021, was their run defense. And they did a lot of things. Brought in Sebastian Joseph Day, brought in Austin Johnson, and addressed some of it in free agency. But then in the fifth round, they end up taking UCLA defensive tackle Tito Ogbonnia, a guy that you had ranked somewhere around a fourth round pick. So I think you probably liked the value, what they got there. But what are some of the tools that you think they liked from Ogbonnia that makes you think that Brain and Staley wanted to plug him into this 3-4 defense?
Yeah, well, I mean, the worst part of the Chargers last year was their run defense. I just don't think they were very good up the middle. And, Linval Joseph was seen as a decent sign, and I would say, but he's just a little bit over the hill. He just wasn't that guy that we have seen back in his heyday with the Giants and also the Vikings. So they needed somebody up the middle of that defense. And I thought they made some really quality signings, as you mentioned already, adding to the defensive line. But also Ogbonnia, I think he's another player that I think is going to come in and be probably a depth filler for the most part early on. But his strength is just how strong he is at the point of attack. And that's simply what the Chargers need up the middle of their defense, just because they just didn't have that guy. They play a lot of multiple fronts, which I think Ogbonnia is going to be able to come in and contribute. Maybe not as a high-end starter initially, but maybe that third or fourth guy off of the bench that can play on some third downs if you want to get him into some pass rush situations. But also he's going to give you plenty of value on first and second down as well.
And he's just gigantic, so he's going to take up a lot of space, and he's going to force people to try to go through him, and so that's going to be a very fun task for opposing offensive linemen. But one of the best value picks, in my opinion, in this Chargers draft was them taking Georgia guard Jamaree Salyer in the 6th round. There were rumors about medical concerns with him, but why do you think he actually fell as far as he did?
Yeah, I was really, really surprised that he fell as far as he did. I think I had a 4th round grade, late 3rd, early 4th round grade on him, if I'm not mistaken. But he's one player that has played all 5 positions for Georgia. And we know Georgia has produced plenty of offensive linemen in years past. And to get that type of value in the 6th round, once again, Tom Telesco showing that he's all in on protecting Justin Herbert. Now you're talking about completely revamping this interior offensive line. They already have their center in place. But if you're able to get Zion Johnson as well as Jamaree Salyer, two, I think, players that can contribute very, very early on, whether with Salyer, whether it's as a starter or even a depth piece, I really like what they were able to do there. So with Telesco, I just really like what he surrounded Justin Herbert with in this draft. I think that's pretty much the stamp that he put on this year's draft class, if I had to sum it up.
Well, yeah, and I think the one thing you've also seen with that is since Brandon Staley took over right before the last draft, before last season, that was obviously one of the first things on his checklist, right? Him and Tom Telesco, get the offensive line fixed, because we've seen one season of Justin Herbert, and that's enough. Pour resources into it like maybe we've never seen from them before, and they've been able to do that. But the Jamaree Salyer thing was just really weird. I was really surprised to see him fall that far, especially, I mean, with just producing on the biggest stage and the high, big spotlight as well. But when you're looking at the Chargers and potentially what they didn't do, obviously you do a ton of mock drafts and you had a lot of different players mocked to the Chargers for different reasons. But who is one player that you mocked to the Chargers and you were like, oh my God, I really love that fit, I hope that it happens, that they did not end up selecting?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about fun, man. I love adding. I'm an offensive guy. I'm a quarterback at heart. So I would have loved to see them add Jameson Williams, Mike Williams, and then also Keenan Allen. I just wanted to see especially, I mean, there were some questions about if they were going to bring Mike Williams back. Obviously, he got the big deal there. He signed for $60 million over 3 years, I believe it was. He got the big deal to come back. So I just wanted them to add more firepower with a player like Jameson Williams. I just think pairing him with Justin Herbert, being able to ease him into that offense by midseason, along with Keenan Allen, and then also Mike Williams. I mean, my God, just imagine trying to stop that, man. That's what I wanted to see, honestly.
That's exactly what we wanted to see too, because we both actually picked him as our mock draft pick.
We were hoping.
Oh, wow.
More hopeful than anything else. Yeah, I mean, those receivers ended up going real quick.
Really fast. But, I mean, that would have been really fun just to see that ability to stretch the field to mix with the other Chargers receivers that they have. But last year, the Chargers struck gold in round 1, stealing left tackle Rashawn Slater with the 13th overall pick. How surprised were you to see him come into the league and receive an all-pro selection as a rookie?
Not at all. I mean, if you watch the tape, him going against Chase Young, I mean, he showed it during his time at Northwestern, and everybody made a big deal about him opting out of the season. But if you think about it, not even just Slater, think about all the players that opted out during that COVID season and still went on to have success in the NFL, whether it was Michael Parsons or Penei Sewell, Jamar Chase, along with Slater. So that, even though they skipped that final season, they didn't have a precipitous drop-off at all. But, I mean, the way he performed at his pro day and then the film to match, and I'm all about having athletes at offensive tackle. I thought, I mean, a lot of people made it a lot of hoopla or big discussion about some people having him ahead of Penei Sewell. I mean, I had Sewell ahead of him, but they were neck and neck for me. Both good players, and obviously Slater is a fantastic player already.
Well, the last thing I have for you is, when does the 2023 draft prep start? I mean, the draft is a year-round process now. When can we start asking you about right tackles from next year?
Oh, it started a month ago. I have a big article coming out next week on ESPN about 25 quarterbacks in this upcoming draft class already. So I'm through watching those guys. Yeah, I'm already through about the top 100 guys right now already. So summer scouting is in full swing. I usually take the back end of the month of June off, and then I come back in July. Recharge the battery that last part of June, and then I'm ready to go in July. College football is what I do, man. I'm ready to go. I'm really excited about this season and this year's draft too.
Yeah, and I think for Chargers fans, it's like, all right, just give me a quarterback class that's going to have as many quarterbacks selected before the Chargers pick as possible, because they have Justin Herbert. So, like, this year, I mean, no quarterback was drafted before the Chargers, but still super happy with who they ended up with Zion Johnson. But super happy to have had Jordan Reid on the show today, coming in from ESPN. You can find him on Twitter at Jordan_Reid, REID. We don't want you confusing him for the tight end Jordan Reid, because that was happening to him much more. But I think, I mean, you're catching up to him. I don't think people are making that, confusion as much nowadays with you sitting next to Mel Kiper Jr. and Todd McShay. But thank you so much, Jordan, for coming on the show again. Always great to get your insight. I think you're one of the best out there doing it. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys as always for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Well, I loved what Jordan Reid had to say. I'm so glad that we were able to get him on again. That was pretty cool. But the thing I liked the most was him talking about the Chargers finally fixing their broken offensive line. But if you have something broken in your car, the only place to get a new part is rockauto.com. Why go to a chain auto parts store and have the guy behind the counter ask you a bunch of questions that you don't know the answer to, when you go to rockauto.com and just a few easy clicks, find the part that you need? Because when you have something wrong with your car, when you need a part, the last thing you want to do is have to run around, try to find it, get the runaround from the guy at the chain auto parts store that just wants to sell you from the warehouse that he works for. You're not going to get the runaround with rockauto.com. You're replacing the middleman with the biggest inventory you're going to find of any auto parts in the industry. And with rockauto.com, you're supporting a family-run business, and you're getting the best prices, because that's really what it's all about, getting the best prices. And you can save 30, 50, even 75% off what you would spend at a chain auto parts store on certain parts at rockauto.com. So whether you're looking for brake parts, tail lamps, make sure to go to rockauto.com right now to see all the parts they have available for your car or truck, and write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box, so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com. All right, David. Well, we got to talk with Jordan Reid, and I loved it, but we do need to talk about the press conference from Keenan Allen, because Keenan Allen doesn't say a lot of things that are going to ruffle feathers. Sometimes he does. I mean, there have been times when he's calling out other receivers and stuff like that. I guess I shouldn't say that, but he always is entertaining, right? Like, just the way he answers questions and stuff like that. I can't get enough of Keenan Allen. But the theme of the press conference today seemed like a little bit different than you would hear, I think, at most OTAs. I mean, just him being there, I think, is different than some OTAs. Not him specifically, because he's the guy that goes, but how many veterans have shown up for the Chargers. I mean, and there's something that we see, especially with all the other Locked On hosts, right? Like all the different veterans that aren't showing up and, trying to explain why they wouldn't be there and stuff. But the Chargers veterans are showing up. And Keenan Allen really talked about that in his press conference. And when he was asked about the veterans being present, he said, the culture is growing. Obviously, you can tell with the free agents that we signed that they like it. They like what they see. They like what they're hearing. They like what they see on tape. He talked about Kyle Van Noy, J.C. Jackson being there, how Kyle Van Noy was a Super Bowl champion. J.C. Jackson's a Super Bowl champion. And these are just elite players. But I think he's right, David. I mean, when you see the kind of turnout that the Chargers have gotten, it definitely kind of puts a different kind of vibe in the air for sure.
It feels different for sure. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing for me is in the past, you would never see a guy like Joey Bosa at OTAs. It never happened. He was a guy that was very notorious about wanting
and he
to
showed
work
up
out
today
on his own. He wanted to do his own thing, work with his people. And now he's at OTAs with the rest of the team. And so I think that to me is the biggest signifier of a clear change in the culture. And Brandon Staley started that change immediately day one, saying, hey, we are going to be a team together. We're going to go out here and do everything as one. We want a connected unit. We want our, offense, defense, special teams to be all, on the same path going forward. So, I mean, Brandon Staley is definitely doing that. It's great to see Joey Bosa and all these veterans out here at OTAs. It just truly shows that they are really connecting, and this is really important to them.
Yeah, and I mean, and by Keenan Allen kind of talking about it, just that he feels it, right? He does feel it. And when he was asked about the culture being different, he said, yeah, it's definitely different. Like I said, we're competing every day. Coach Staley is definitely being a player's coach as far as keeping us healthy and not making us do too much. More football, more basic, more understanding technique, more understanding assignments. When we get down to it, we know what to do. And that has been kind of his MO since he got to the Chargers, was just he's not making these guys push out at 100% during these times. And I mean, there's nothing worse than a guy going down during OTAs, a voluntary thing where you're really just going there and getting your feet wet, right? That's not something that's super important in the long term. For some players, obviously it is, but that is something that makes a difference and something that the players notice. So when you get guys like Joey Bosa and you have all these guys out there, I mean, I think that's part of the reason. But those relationships that you talked about paid off for the Chargers in this offseason, right? I mean, we talked about the culture changing. Yeah, it's kind of, not quantifiable as far as like something that you can put numbers to, but you can put numbers to how many people are showing up for OTAs, right? And that is something that they just have more of this year than they've had in years past. But I think, the competing every day, all of that stuff is stuff that you're going to hear all the time. But he also said that he likes how the culture is growing. He said you have guys like Derwin and Justin Herbert. All those guys are here, and you don't see that with every team. But the other thing you talked about, David, was the offense, right? That's something that Keenan Allen obviously has a lot of reason to want to be better offensively than the Chargers were last year, being even a great offense that they were. But he said this year it feels special. He said it's going to be crazy. It's going to be special. Last year was our first year, obviously. So this year it's going to be better and it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that Mike Williams also echoed as well. It just said, hey, it's another year in the offense for Justin Herbert for the first time since high school. I mean, still can't believe that that's a fact, that he's had so much turnover, that he's never had the same offensive coordinator, the same coach this for a second consecutive year. And now he does. And now everyone is just so much more comfortable. And I think that's what you hear everyone saying. It's like, hey, we know this offense now. I mean, last year we were having to learn something completely new that was very, very difficult, very complex. The New Orleans Saints offense, which is kind of the root of this Chargers offense, obviously with components of different, elements of the best offenses out there, like Green Bay and San Francisco running concepts. But I mean, there's a lot to learn. I mean, even Justin Herbert was saying like, hey man, I was drowning with all of the stuff I had to learn. And now going into year two, it's not all about learning it. They know it now. It's about fine tuning it and getting better and adding more wrinkles into the offense. That's what they get to do now. So I think everyone feels like they are going to have a much better offense than an even top 5 offense that they put out there last year.
Well, and I think when you're looking at the offense, right, I mean, the biggest thing is getting better players, right? Because you can say, year 2 and all that stuff makes the difference. And he did say that. And that is where it helps, is you're picking up where you left off. And that's been a key theme, especially for the offensive people, saying, hey, now we get to build off that. And I mean, really both sides. The defensive players as well got a year in this system. And the guys they brought in, a lot of them have already played in the system.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about offensively, I mean, that has been the theme, is picking up where they left off. but they didn't add a ton of players offensively, right? They didn't
No.
add a ton of skill position players. They added a couple of key guys like Isaiah Spiller, right? And Gerald Everett's another big one. And they made more improvements to the offensive line, which is going to help. But this
Yeah.
is what he said about how this offense can grow, even without really talking about the new dudes that are coming in. He said, it can grow a lot. We left a whole lot on the field. I think we led the league in drops. Yeah, they did. Obviously, fourth down was big for us. Third down wasn't great. I think we can get better on third down and just understanding the offense. Like we just said, the understanding of the offense, being in the second year, Justin Herbert being able to make changes, just keep finding ways to get down the field. So I do think, David, I mean, obviously they didn't add that speed receiver, right? They didn't add the right tackle that would have been, or is still pretty much the biggest hole, the biggest question mark left on the offense.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean the team can't get better, right? Being the second year of this offense is obviously going to help some of those guys. And obviously the guys that you brought in, like Jamaree Salyer and Zion Johnson and Isaiah Spiller and Gerald Everett, like these guys will make an impact too. But just these guys getting better in the system is another reason to think that they could be better in this offense, even after having such a good year.
Well, I think part of the reason why we saw somewhat of a conservative offense out of Joe Lombardi last year is because they were still trying to understand the offense and they were still learning it. I
Right.
think this year, now that they have all those concepts down, they're probably going to be able to stretch the field more. They're going to be more comfortable to stretch the field more.
Yeah.
And they know that they're going to have a much better defense that's going to be on the other side of them to be able to pick them up if they do, take a shot and it doesn't work out in their favor. So I think that confidence level that you have in your defense now is going to allow you to play more free on offense and really go out there and throw the football down the field. We know Justin Herbert has one of the premier arms in the NFL, and we didn't really see him utilize it nearly enough last season. So I think that's one of
Sure.
the bigger things that we can see, coupled with more time from a offensive line that's continuing to improve. I mean, I think you feel really good about 4 out of the 5 elements on that offensive line, which is crazy to say because
Yeah.
a lot of teams out there would love that.
No,
But
Bushi's back in town too. I mean, that's what everyone's
yeah, hey,
talking
watch
about.
out. I mean, he's definitely saying he's in LA, but I mean, a lot of reasons to feel like this Chargers team and this Chargers offense in particular is going to be even better this season.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the only reason it wouldn't, right, is just because, yeah, I mean, Keenan Allen gets a year older, right? I mean, Mike
Yeah.
Williams is a year older, still definitely in his prime, but like
Oh yeah.
for the most part, just these guys being in the same system, having another year, and it's definitely going to improve the offense for sure. It's just hard to say how much, right? It's hard to put numbers next to that just because you just don't know how much more they're picking it up, how many more wrinkles they're putting in. Obviously, they didn't add a ton of speed more offensively. Jalen Guyton is pretty fast, right? They have some guys who are pretty fast, but if your offensive line is better, it gives guys more time to get down the field, create more separation down the field. Just because we didn't see it as much last year doesn't mean we won't see it more this year, even though they're bringing back some of the same, pretty much the same wide receiving room outside of a couple of different exceptions like DeAndre Carter and stuff. But they didn't add those pieces. It doesn't mean they can't get better on offense. But we do have a guy who knows a whole lot about the Chargers offense, and that's Joe Lombardi. And on tomorrow's show, we'll get into what he had to say at his press conference because he did enlighten us about the right tackle situation at this point. And it was interesting to hear what he said about that and a bunch of other things about the Chargers offense. So we'll be back with you guys tomorrow to get into that. We are going 3 days a week for June. That is why there haven't been as many episodes so far this month, but we will have at least 3 shows every week. We'll try to keep it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but the main thing we're focused on right now is bringing the best content, bringing the best guests, which we have some really, more big guests lined up, and that's going to be, the David Droegemeier special as the guest booker. He has some things lined up you guys should be very excited about. So to make sure you don't miss it, subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and also follow the show for free on all platforms wherever you get your podcast from, because there might be a few less shows in the month of June. They're going to be bangers, and we're going to keep on bringing on great guests and just really focusing in on the great content we do have during these weeks and getting you guys involved too for things like Fan Mail Friday. So if you have extra time, you guys want to get some questions in, we'll try to get to some tomorrow. But make sure you guys go to at Locked On LAC on Twitter. If you want to hit us up on Twitter, we might put a post out tomorrow to see, just in case we do have time for it. But you can also comment on Instagram at Locked On Chargers. You can also call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924, and we try to get to as many Chargers voicemails as we can. We definitely want to keep getting you guys involved too, so make sure you guys hit us up on those places, and you can follow me on Twitter at DanTalkSports and David Droegemeier on Twitter at DroTalkSD. But that's going to do it for today. We'll be back with Joe Lombardi's comments from OTAs and much more tomorrow. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.